Well, we turn now to our international press review, and I'm joined in the studio by Erin Ogunke. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Haxi.
You've been looking at some of the latest reaction to the growing controversy surrounding Israeli Prime Minister Binyamin Netanyahu's comments about Gaza.
Yeah, that's right. This is creating friction with Israel's closest ally. That's, of course, the United States. Now, the Wall Street Journal tells us that Binyamin Netanyahu suggested that Israel will likely keep military control of Gaza for an indefinite period once the war with Hamas ends. Other officials suggesting as well that there's no plan at all to create an interim government to run civilian life in the Gaza Strip. Now, this prompted Washington to stress their opposition to Israel's potential reoccupation of the territory. Now, Haaretz, the Israeli paper, delves deeper into this divergence. The Israeli paper then saying that there are growing signs and nuanced statements that indicate that Israel and the U.S. have what seems to be an incompatible perception over the next phases of the war. The White House is, of course, concerned about the growing civilian death toll in Gaza, about Netanyahu's refusal thus far to allow for humanitarian pauses. But Washington's main concern, of course, as well, is to prevent wider escalation of the war through its spread to Hezbollah and Iran, things that, of course, could put U.S. interests and even lives in danger.
And Erin, there's also a growing concern about the responsibilities that could be incumbent on Israel if indeed it does decide to pursue that course in Gaza.
Yeah, that's right. That is the gist of a piece in today's edition of The Guardian here on the right. Editorialist Peter Beaumont points out that under international humanitarian law, the prolonged occupation of Gaza by Israeli troops would place clear responsibilities on Israel as an occupying force, including to provide residents there with food, water, other basic resources for survival. The piece points out, though, that rhetoric from members of Netanyahu's government suggests that they have absolutely no intention to respect those responsibilities, which this editorialist concludes is a formula for a, quote, rather different chapter of violence.
Meanwhile, Erin, here in France, a proposed mass demonstration against anti-Semitism is the source of some new divisions.
Yeah, that's right. The presidents of both of France's houses of parliament called for a major demonstration this Sunday against anti-Semitism, as the country has seen a spike in anti-Semitic acts since the start of this latest war between Israel and Hamas. For perspective, in the past month alone, more than 1,000 anti-Semitic incidents have been recorded. That is twice as many in 1 month as all of 2022. Now, the Huffington Post tells us that the majority of political parties in France, including the far right, expressed support for this march. Essentially everyone except for France Unbowed leader, the leftist Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He tweeted, as the HuffPost tells us, that under the pretext of fighting anti-Semitism, the, quote, friends of unconditional support for a massacre, that meaning, of course, Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip, have their meeting together. It's worth mentioning that other voices on the left have also criticized the likely presence and the inclusion of the far-right National Rally Party, which many, of course, say was actually founded by anti-Semites.
Erin, meanwhile, there's surprising new information about the potential provenance of some of the Stars of David that have been daubed, graffitied across buildings here in Paris and also the Paris suburbs.
Yeah, this caused shockwaves in France, bringing to mind, of course, some of the darkest chapters of the country's history. But Le Monde tells us that it turns out that investigators now believe it was likely an orchestrated foreign attempt, Russian attempt, to destabilize the country. The paper saying that the choice of the Star of David, which can be seen either as a sign of support for Israel or as a threat to the Jewish community, represents kind of the classic Russian agenda of trying to sow discord through disinformation campaigns in Europe, an attempt to stir tensions and conflict amongst the population, and to kind of give the impression that whatever is happening in the Middle East will arrive on European territory as well.
And you've also been looking at a story out of the US, the US Supreme Court, likely set to maintain a rare limit on gun rights.
Yeah, the case is the United States versus Rahimi, as the Texas Tribune here tells us. It concerns a case of a Texas man who fired guns in public multiple times after having fired a gun at his ex-girlfriend, or threatened his ex-girlfriend with a gun, rather. He was then given a restraining order and banned from possessing firearms. He said that that was a a violation of his constitutional Second Amendment rights to bear arms. But the New York Times reports that actually, according to debates that were held on Tuesday, the Supreme Court may indeed be ready to accept the argument holding that the government can disarm people under domestic violence orders. Now, if confirmed, when a final decision comes, probably in June, it would limit the scope of last year's major Supreme Court decision, which significantly expanded gun rights. This is all based on the theory of danger, meaning that if someone does pose a danger to society, it is reasonable to limit their right to hold firearms.
And Erin, you're going to finish your press review with some rather beautiful images of the dark universe, as it's known.
Yeah, that's right. Here's a picture from the Swiss paper Le Temps, but I'll finish with The Guardian, which explains that the Euclid Space Telescope is a mission focused on dark matter and dark energy, is trying to figure out how to create the largest ever cosmic 3D map ever made, the objective being to infer the distribution of dark matter on a larger scale. For perspective, dark matter makes up about, and dark energy make up about 95% of our universe, and we still know essentially nothing about it other than that it essentially holds the universe together. So lots of exciting discoveries to come in space.
Erin Ogukiya with a look through the day's papers nationally and internationally. Thank you very much.